When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel. Okay, peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Shalom, shalom to the family. I want to thank you for taking time once again out of your busy schedule to join me here this evening. Actually, it's still this afternoon. I know what, it's getting kind of late now, guys. It's after 2. I want to thank you for taking time once again out of your busy schedule to join me here this evening as we discuss, all right, the return of the Mashiyach Part 2. Once again, the return of Mashiyach Part 2. And actually what I did is that I put this in the form of a question because I want to see where everyone is at. I'm still holding to the facts that I have, that we can find out whether or not there will be a return of the Mashiach when we begin to look a little bit more closer into the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, 7, 8, 9, 10. And one of the most feared chapters that I see is the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter. It is it's extremely rare that you will see anyone dive into Daniel, the 11th chapter, especially when we begin to look at how the kingdoms are moving from one metal to the next. And when we get to Daniel, the 11th chapter, verse 36, I believe that that particular verse speaks volumes in sharing with us on how we move down this timeline here. All right. So with me saying that, let's go ahead and do what we do in all of the classes that I do. Let's begin by doing the Father's Prayer. And we're going to do that in Hebrew first. Biblical Hebrew, actually not even biblical Hebrew, but in modern Hebrew, and then we'll do it in what we know as biblical Hebrew. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kodas Shemka, O Yit Barak Melkutka, Retsunka Yahiye Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ayin, Lat Minu Tamadit, Umakulanu, Kata Atenu, Ka'acher Anaknu, Mukalim, U Atabi Anu Layede, Nasayon, U Sham Ranu, U Tabi Anu Layede, Nasion, U Sham Ranu Makal Ra. All esteem belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua Mashiyach. And we always want to make sure that we give all esteem to the Father for sending his Son to be that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. And we thank the Father for sending all of the great prophets, teaching and just really putting their lives on the line, sharing with us how important it is for us to return into covenant relationship with the Father. Okay, Mr. McCall, we're going to do this in English. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, I pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all esteem once again belongs to the Father, through his Son, Yahushua Mashiyach. Then what we have here, Mr. McCall, is another form of prayer, and we have the ancient Hebrew alphabet, all right? And we're going to do the Tefillah, the Father's Prayer, this way. Abanawa Shabbat Shemayim Kudash Haya Shamka Yahuah Malak Wavka Thaba'a Ratazaka Haya Aisha Ba'arataza Kawa Haya Bashamayim Nathan Lanawa Lacham Kal Yawam Wasalak Lanawa Kawab Wathinawa Kasalak Lanawa Kawab Wanawa Wala'a, Thabaya Anawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Hawashayana, Mayan, Rai, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwap, Walahala, Wahatha Praharath, Lahai Walam. All esteem belongs to the Father through his Son, Yahushua Mashiyach. And I want to say shalom, shalom to my sister Sharon, as always, for your support. And I see that you're already here to add your moral support. Now, Mishpachah, the reason why I decided to do this class is because of, once again, the ongoing conversation, the return of the Mashiyach. And once again, I have this in a question form. Those of you that are tuning in, I pray that you hit the like button, hit the share button, so that we can create a little algorithm here, because I really want brothers and sisters, their response on this topic here. And I believe the reason why there's so much kickback on whether or not there would be a return of the Mashiyach is because, once again, a misunderstanding of the foundational teachings that we get in the book of Daniel. Daniel saw a colossal figure, which is key to end time events. And when I say end time events, I'm talking about a period of time that goes further than 70 AD. So if we don't have the complete understanding of the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, and then after the Romans, we see now something happening to the Roman Empire, where we have now, going down the colossal figure, it begins to talk about the 10 toes and how these 10 toes now invaded Rome. Rome didn't actually come to an end, but we have to make sure that we understand the prophetic timeline and look at who were these 10 toes, and are these 10 toes in existence to this very day. So we have a transitioning period where this invading tribes, these barbaric Germanic tribes, invaded Rome around 476 AD. And then we have now what we call the Little Horn. And then the Little Horn comes in and removes 3 of these 10 barbaric tribes. And then we begin to look at these very important numbers. These numbers are 1,260 years. We have an understanding of a 490-year period, and then we begin to talk about 2,300 evenings and mornings. I believe that if we can master that understanding, it will give us a clear understanding on whether or not there would be a return of Mashiyach. Now, this whole thing about the return of the Mashiyach is extremely important because there are a lot of different religions out here. Okay, there's over 45,000. Okay, that's right. There's over 45,000. THOUSAND. 45,000 different Christian religions out here, and there's a lot of miseducation, a lot of understandings that are out there, but you can't have 45,000 understandings of the Mashiyach. But each one of these religions now is expecting the return of a redeemer, the return of a conscious one, the return of a Mashiyach. Like, take for example, like in the class that I did about 2 weeks ago, in Islam, you have the Mahdi. So the Muslims are actually looking for a deliverer, someone that's going to actually return righteousness back to the planet Earth again. And once again, in Islam, you have what they call the Mahdi. In Judaism, you have the Mashiyach, and which is interesting. So even these names that I'm using, when we begin to define them by their culture and by the religion that they attach themselves to, instead of using the Greek Western dictionary, you will find it very interesting where everyone is sharing that they believe that we are in some type of crisis. Something is going on. So once again, we have the Mahdi, we have the Mashiyach. In Christianity, you have Jesus, who you know to be the Christ. In Zosarism, They anticipate the coming of someone called the Saoshayant, spelled Saoshyant. In Buddhism, you have the Maitreya. They're expecting a deliverer, someone to actually come and restore righteousness back to the planet Earth. You have Hinduism. They foretell of the coming of a Mashiyach by the name of Kalki. And once again, everyone sees that there is something not right. Something's not right. And so they're expecting the coming of, again, a Mashiyach to restore righteousness back to the earth again. And then you have a religion called Taoism. There's the anticipation of a Mashiyach by the name of Li Hong. So the reason why I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention so that we can make sure that we're paying very close attention to the world that's around us. I know a lot of people are still believing in this political system, and that this particular political system that is in play now with Donald Trump and the things that he's doing, that maybe the governmental systems that are set up today, whether you're Republican or Democrat, that would actually be the thing that was set, I guess, some type of order back in the earth again. But when we begin to look at what is actually going on, family, we're talking about a system that now has a $75 trillion debt. $75 trillion debt. We look at the trade wars that are going on between China and America. These tariffs that are coming into play is going to affect everybody that's around us. Everyone. So if we're not conscious enough to see what's going on and see that there's a plot to bring in this new world order, and who is this going to affect the most? My argument is that it's going to affect so-called Black people the most. Why I say that is because looking at history, biblical history, as it leads up to today, there has always been a plan. There has always been a plan. There has always been an agenda to destroy one particular race. One particular race. When you go down during the times when Adam was expelled from the garden, that's how far I'm going back to today. There was a certain people that had a certain belief, that had a covenant with a God, and because of that particular relationship that they had, which was a covenant relationship, even to this day, there's the threat of another Mashiyach coming to gather the people, bring them now in unison, and return righteousness back to the community again. I have a video that I would like to share with you, Mishpachah, and let's see what you're able to make out of this video that I'm about to play. The true story behind Judas and the Black Messiah. And let's see what J. Edgar Hoover has to say, because he was the one now that coined this term, the fear of a Black Messiah.
Good afternoon. The 20-year-old chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton, was shot and killed in a pre-dawn shootout with state's attorney's police in his West Side apartment. Another party member, 22-year-old Mark Clark of Peoria, also died in the shootout, which left 4 Panthers and 2 police officers wounded. State's attorney's police say they were fired upon when they tried to enter the apartment at 2337 West Monroe on a search warrant issued for possession of illegal weapons. 3 more Panther Party members are in police custody in connection with the shooting.
Officer Carmody, when you knocked on the door, what happened? Well, I didn't actually knock. I heard our officers at the front announce their office and shots fired. So I kicked in the back door, and as soon as the door opened, I could see shots being fired at us at the back door.
Was it lighted inside?
Yes, the whole apartment, the kitchen was lit and the front room was lit. The bedrooms were dark.
Did you know at that time approximately how many people were inside?
No, we had no idea.
Did you know that they were Black Panthers?
No, we didn't. We just knew that, or we were informed that there were guns and contraband in the building.
Did you have information that indicate that Fred Hampton might be there?
Not to my knowledge.
The raid on Hampton's apartment was conducted by the state's attorney's office, acting on a tip from an informant that there were illegal guns there.
That was the news report from WMAQ on December 5th, 1969, following the shooting death of Fred Hampton, the chair of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. He was shot and killed on December 4th of 69. Hampton shot in a raid by Chicago police who were executing a warrant for illegal guns. Police alleged it was a gun battle, but an investigation later revealed only one shot was fired by a Black Panther, a reflexive shot fired into the ceiling in response being shot and killed by police. This is the focus of the new critically acclaimed film Judas and the Black Messiah. Here's a look.
It's not a question of violence or non-violence. It's a question of resistance to fascism or non-existence within fascism. You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
Daniel Kaluuya there. Joining us now, activist Mother Akua, a former Black Panther who was Fred Hampton's fiance at the time of his death, and also with us, director, co-writer, and producer of the film, Shaka King. Good morning to you both. We so appreciate you being here. As I mentioned earlier, everybody is talking about this film. Daniel Kaluuya just won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor on Sunday night for the performance we just saw there. Shaka, let me begin with you. For people who don't know the full story of what happened on December 4th, 1969, everything that led up to it, everything that came after it, what grabbed your attention about this story?
Initially, what grabbed my attention about the story was the fact that I'd never heard anything about William O'Neill, who was the FBI informant who, infiltrated the Illinois chapter and is a drugged Chairman Fred Hampton and gave the FBI the blueprints to his apartment. So the story that I'd heard growing up was just that, Fred Hampton was a Black Panther who'd been shot by the cops. I didn't realize it was an intricate assassination plot that had, been essentially, crafted by the most powerful, government organization in the country.
Mother Akua, Gene Robinson's here with a question for you. Gene?
Mother Akua, maybe you could explain to the audience who may not know, what was it about Fred Hampton that made him deemed so dangerous, so potentially dangerous to the power structure in Chicago, the nation's largest Black community, and to the nation in 1969? What was it about him?
Well, the federal government, J. Edgar Hoover, FBI had described the Black Panther Party as the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. And under the COINTELPRO program, Panther offices were attacked everywhere. Chairman Fred Hampton was, his phones were tapped at his parents' house when he was about 13 or 14 years old by the FBI. So he was a tremendous organizer. He was a brilliant man. He was a powerful speaker. And also he was against the exploitation of oppressed people colonized in the U.S. and around the world. So he became a threat because he was able to pull together a tremendous coalition, became known as the Rainbow Coalition, that began to unite various groups across various racial lines to fight against the attack that we were experiencing in colonized communities all over the country. So the fear, as the documents show, the COINTELPRO documents show, the fear of a Black Messiah, someone that could electrify and unify the masses of people. And in that clip right there, you see the Fed where they came in and stood over Chairman Fred and shot him point blank after they had got me and everybody else out the room.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's
Okay, Mr. Ricard, the video that I just shared with you is for educational purposes only. I am not trying to do a military campaign against, I believe, to be the injustices that we see here in the world today. This is for educational purposes only. I just want to make sure that people are aware of present day situations and it need to be discussed. All right. These situations have been going on for hundreds of years, geared towards a specific group of people. And throughout the years, there has been Mashiachs that came to awaken the people that were in this deep state of darkness, where these people lost a consciousness and they were now in this world of darkness. And so a Mashiyach came to liberate, bring these people back into covenant relationship with the Father. As long as these particular individuals, who I believe to be Israelites, stuck with the covenant of their forefathers. And to be particular, understanding the walk of the Mashiyach during the first century, who taught the religion of Abraham. And the religion of Abraham was obedience. And because of disobedience, we have a new set of rules being implemented for the nation of Israel until a allotted or specific time. Meaning now is that we see with disobedience comes Levitical services. And these Levitical services now was a priest acting as a Mashiyach doing temple services to atone for the children of Israel. And this process went on from year to year to year to year to year. And if we follow now the book of Daniel correctly, we will see that there was a point in history where an individual did come when we properly are understanding the 490 years. When did the 490 years start? When did the 490 years end? And what about the 2,300 evenings and mornings? What about the 1,260 years? What about this little horn? And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But again, we can't bring out every single thing today. It is going to take some time. And those of you that are truly interested in what I have to say, just follow this series that I'm going to be doing, The Return of the Mashiyach, Part 2. And this is a question. And again, the reason why I put it in the form of a question, because I want you to think. You to think. I don't want you to have this preconceived notion that, listen, you know what? I'm leading the witness. Let's just see what the writings say in Aramaic. Let's see what the writings say in Hebrew and even in the Greek. Just make sure you do a thorough investigation prior to you making your decision. So again, the title of today's class is called The Return of the Mashiyach Part 2. And this is an introduction. This is Part 2. Part 1, I would strongly suggest at your convenience, obviously, that you read and study Part 1. So, the intro goes this way, Mr. Ricard, because I've been doing this for quite some time now. We are now going to embark on an incredible journey. The remaining chapters in Daniel are principally prophetic. Okay, so beginning with Daniel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, those are prophetic books, and they need to be studied very thoroughly. And once again, you don't see a lot of Hebrew Israelites, and I say that in quotations, look into, study, and then do some type of presentation or teachings now on Daniel, the 11th chapter. And I'm going to just let you know, there's a lot of history involved. So if you're not a big reader, you're not going to be able to come up with the true understanding on whether or not there's going to be a second return of the Mashiyach. Now, these later chapters now, they outline the rise and fall of great empires from Daniel's time all the way down to the end of human history. When I say human history, I'm not talking about the world blowing up, but there has to be a change. The path that we are now following, if some type of divine intervention doesn't happen, there will be no one left here. Not only are the people suffering, my argument is that land animals are suffering. The fish, the mammals of the seas are suffering. Just the air that we breathe, the food that we eat. There needs to be a change. Something has to happen. We need a restart. A restart. Because once again, the path that we're now on is a path of destruction. And what happened in 70 AD, Mishpachah, that was only the tip of the iceberg. And like I have been sharing so often in these classes that I have been doing, is that this is no longer centralized. This cancer is no longer centralized amongst the children of Israel. This virus has now gone worldwide. Worldwide. So when I hear brothers, they talk about, well, they're having issues with the New Testament and what about the nation of Israel? Listen, I'm not knocking anything about the nation of Israel. I'm only sharing that this thing has gone global. It's now global because the people that was given the responsibility to be the light of the world, when you read the Old Testament, it's hard for me to believe that collectively as a people, we failed in being the light of the world for the other nations. So we play a very big part in what is happening today because Israel was given a responsibility at Mount Sinai. We were told that we are now in covenant relationship with a supreme high being, and we were supposed to now set the trend to righteousness. But what is happening today is that we're setting the trend to wickedness. Meaning now is that you can look at any wickedness that the other nations are doing. But if an Israelite gets involved in that wickedness that the other nations are doing, it is now like tenfold. We now have our sisters, all right, entertaining country music. And I notice now is that they're now dancing to country music. Now, why is it when we see our sisters dancing to country music, why is it so slutty, seductive? Why is it so pornographic? It's because everything that we touch, being that we are the people, it seems as if it magnifies itself to like the 10th degree, the 100th degree. My argument is that Israelites set the trend. The so-called Negro sets the trend. And it has always been that way. So we can set the trend in wickedness. How much more can we set the trend in righteousness and put our personal feelings and our differences aside and see what the scriptures is saying? What is the scripture saying? And the only way that we will be able to understand that is we look at the language, the culture, and the time when these events are happening. So let's go back to the presentation. However, we must understand that the rise and fall of these empires is not the central focus. They simply provide a backdrop and attest to the Father's sovereignty in world affairs. They give us reference points in history to better understand the Father's amazing plan of redemption. And we're still looking for that because of the times that we're living in. Now, the remaining chapters will illuminate our understanding of the Mashiyach or Christ and his mission to this world. And the reason why I use Christ is because, and you see the word God, is because there's a lot of people that watch the videos. And I just want to make sure that everybody is comfortable in their understanding. But God, yes, I say Yahuah, Christ, the Mashiyach. But there is a difference between the Mashiyach Hebraically and Christ with this definition in Christianity. There is a difference. And then we'll talk about that a little bit later. So once again, the remaining chapters will illuminate our understanding of the Mashiyach or Christ and his mission to this world, as well as his ministry in the heavenly sanctuary. All right, I should have had that in highlights. In the heavenly sanctuary, we're going to see how all the time prophecies work together and how they give us a greater insights in the gospel of the Mashiyach that will help us show how Christ is preparing his people for his second coming. Now, what is the principle of the Bible interpreting the Bible? Which is very important. What is the principle of the Bible interpreting the Bible? 1 second here, Ms. Fakad. 1 second. When we study the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, because these two go hand in hand, if we can't understand Daniel, you're going to run into a world of problems with the book of Revelation, because Revelation is an extension of Daniel and more. Once again, the book of Revelation is an extension of Daniel and more, but Daniel lays out the blueprint, all right, the floor plans. And if we can't understand the floor plans, yes, we're going to have major problems with the book of Revelation. We find that the Bible uses symbols to represent ideas, people, places, and things. And this is what I find to be most complicated or complicating when I have these particular conversations with people in regards to their view of what happened during the first century. And that view that I'm referring to is what happened in 27 AD and who did Yahuchanan the Immerser immerse. I believe that Yahuchanan the Immerser immersed the Mashiyach. And that can be clearly understood when we read the book of Daniel, where it talks about someone being cut off in the midst of the week, when was the decreed to rebuild the temple during troublous times. All of that is very, very important. So it all depends how a person is using or looking at symbols to represent ideas, people, places, and things. The symbols aren't meant to be interpreted literally. All right? They're not. There is no literal lion with wings. There is no literal bear with 3 ribs in his mouth. There is no literal leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. When you go to the zoo, you see nothing like that. Nothing like that. Now, there are a lot of hybrid things that they're doing. I do agree with that. But to keep the argument safe, there are no creatures running around looking like that. All right. So again, symbols is going to be very important. The symbols aren't meant to be interpreted literally. They are to be seen as representations of the real thing. However, there is no mystery about what these symbols mean. The Bible itself proves their definitions. Once again, the Bible itself proves their definitions. This is the principle behind the Bible interpreting the Bible. When we see a symbol in the Bible prophecy, okay, a definition can be found somewhere in the Bible. In the Bible. What's funny to me is that I'm not saying don't use the Webster's dictionary or the Oxford's dictionary, whatever dictionary that you use. But I am a strong advocate of let's look at it from a Hebraic perspective. The Oxford Dictionary and the Webster's Dictionary is not going to give you the explanation to ancient biblical writings, because I'm finding out is that those definitions a lot of the times don't describe the culture. And that's the whole thing, the culture. Those that live in, let's say, in the deep South, they have a culture, they have a way of doing things. Well, you can go to certain Caribbean islands and the culture, I mean, they're the same people, but the culture and the language is different. So if we can't understand symbols, if we can't understand culture in communicating, how in the world do you believe? How in the world do you believe that an Oxford or a Webster's dictionary can give you the definition or the clear definition of a people that existed thousands of years ago? How can Webster and Oxford do that? Those books now are more centered around what is going on today, not yesterday. But let's read on. When we see a symbol in Bible prophecy, a definition can be found somewhere in the Bible. Sometimes the definition will be nearby, only a few scripture verses away. Other times the definitions are in other chapters of or books of the Bible. In many cases, there are several definitions scattered throughout the Bible. Whenever the definitions are found, they complement one another and consistently provide clarity of a given prophetic symbol. The first 3 verses of Daniel 7 gives us a great example of the prophetic symbols of the Bible. Now, what I want to do is look at the first 3 verses, and I want to identify the symbols, and then let's find their definitions, all right? So what we're going to do now is go ahead with the program, and we're going to look at Daniel 7, 1 through 3. Now, there is a style of reading scripture. And as we know, it is often called hermeneutics, all right? And hermeneutics is just the science and knowledge of understanding biblical texts. But we have to make sure we understand hermeneutics, because you also need to know the lenses a person is using also now when they're using, again, hermeneutics to interpret scripture, because you can be looking at something, all right, and the same person could be looking at the same object and see something totally different. And this is the reason why I am key on letting the Bible interpret the Bible. So a person's line of study varies on the individual's agenda as he or she presents their case. And once again, you and I can be looking at the same object, the same time of the day, the whole 9 yards. And because of hermeneutics now, you can see and explain something totally different. And sometimes it's good because where one person expounds upon, the next person can expound upon it and give it more context. And so this is how the body works. I may be able to see something one way. The next person can complement what I'm seeing by elaborating on what he's seeing. But it has to be scriptural. Has to be scriptural. All right. So let's go ahead with the rest of the presentation here. Daniel 7, the 7th chapter, verses 1 through 3. Now, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw in a dream. He saw in a dream. Now, let me just pull this up here on also my side here, because there's something that I want to show you guys here. I want to show you something. In Daniel, the 7th chapter, let's continue to read it. I saw a dream and visions in my mind as he laid in his bed, and this is the NASB version, in his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. Let me first start off by saying this. Daniel, the 7th chapter, was written in Aramaic. Aramaic, which is a form of Hebrew, but there is a slight difference, and in some cases, a big difference. And this is when we begin to look at homographs, all right? And the reason why I said homographs is because when you look at Daniel, the 7th chapter, and we read verse 1, we see that the word vision is used in verse 1, and the word vision is used in verse 2. That word vision there, okay, is the word kelim, all right, kelim. Excuse me. Hold on, I'm jumping too ahead of myself. The word is actually is in Aramaic. The word is kezev, and it's the Strong's number 2376. And I apologize for that. Once again, when we see these two words, visions, being used in Daniel 7:1 and 7:2, that word vision is kezev. Kezev. So let's move on. This is Daniel's first vision that the sovereign gave him. Notice that the Father gave him his first vision when it was the first year of Belshazzar's reign as king. Daniel would have been around 70 years old at this time. Daniel went into the Babylonian captivity when he was about, this is just an estimate, between the ages, let's say, of 15 and 18. And the reason why we're able to come up with this date is because when we look at now the age of when Daniel came out of the Babylonian captivity, you can pretty much get a good idea about when Daniel went into the Babylonian captivity. So let's read on. Now, did you notice the major symbols in verses 2 and 3? All right. There are winds. All right, because we're talking about, once again, make sure that I'm following along and you're following along with the slideshow. We had already talked about the Bible uses symbols to represent ideas, people, places, and things. And the symbols aren't meant to be interpreted literally. So once again, There are winds, a sea, and beasts. So I have, let's think about it. So try to picture these symbols in your mind. Can you imagine winds blowing and stirring up the sea? The waves are crashing and tumbling. It's stormy and somber. Then as the sea is stirred, 4 beasts start to come up from the sea, right? Winds, sea, and beasts. What could these symbols mean? And this, again, if we clearly understand this and let the Bible explain itself, Mishpachai, the question would be answered whether or not there is a second coming of a Mashiyach, the Mashiyach. The good news is that we don't have to guess. We can let the Bible give us the definitions. Now let's look at the beast symbol first. Let's look at that. Beast. So what is a beast in Bible prophecy? The answer is found just a few verses down in the chapter. Let's look at Daniel 7:17. In Daniel 7:17, these great beasts, which are 4 in number. So these beasts now are 4 kings who will arise from the earth. So, watch this. There's no need to speculate. The Bible defines a beast as a king. 4 beasts are 4 kings. Real simple. However, the Bible later gives another definition that complements the first definition. Let's look at Daniel 7:23. Thus he said, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom. So the beast now represents kings and a kingdom. So once again, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which will be different. All right, which would be different from all the other kingdoms. And this 4th beast will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. Now, this 4th beast lets us know that it is no longer centralized and has a specific aim in destroying the nation of Israel. Where the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, it made mention that this 4th beast will devour the whole earth. The whole earth. I did plenty of classes before explaining my perspective using biblical scriptures, understanding symbols, typology, and that America is an extension of Rome. But this 4th beast now will actually devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. So beasts are considered kingdoms. From this verse, we can, with all confidence, conclude that a beast can be either a king or a kingdom. If there is a king, then there is a kingdom. If there's a kingdom, there's a king. So they work hand in hand. Since kings are the chief rulers of their kingdoms, they can essentially represent the kingdom itself. Just as we saw, King Nebuchadnezzar represented by the head of gold. The king himself represents the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. That is real clear, cut, and simple. And this is how we want to attack all of the scriptures. Now, I have a special note. All right. We want to try to leave no stones unturned. Since a beast is a kingdom, modern terminology might use the terms nation or state. Okay. And this is the reason why I had talked about when we begin to look at the Webster's Dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary. I'm not saying don't use those books that help you out. But today, we don't use the word so much kingdom, but the modern terminology that is used today is nation or state. So the idea is the same. Now that we've discovered what a beast symbolizes in Bible prophecy, it is much easier to begin to understand what the mark of the beast is about in Revelation, the 13th chapter. Because we're now talking about a king, a kingdom, nation, or state. All right. And we'll tackle Revelation, the 13th chapter later, much later on. All right. Because we have to make sure that we have a good understanding of the books of Daniel. Okay, so we'll identify the mark of the beast when we get to that study. But for now, let's look at and know that the mark of the beast, this kingdom, nation, or state, it runs, is synonymous. All right, so let's pay very close attention to the timeline. All right, let's just say that there. I don't want to say too much on that right now. The sea. What is the sea in Bible prophecy? So let's examine the following scriptures, because we want to try to make sure that we break this thing down to the finest minute, if possible. Isaiah, the 57th chapter, verses 20 to 21. But the wicked, which are people, okay? But the wicked are like the tossing sea. So these wicked people are being compared to the tossing sea. For these people, which are like the tossing sea, cannot be quieted, and its waters tossed up refuse and mud. So these people that are wicked, which are being described as sea and waters, they're bringing forth waste and things that are of no value. So the refuse in the mud represents things that are of no value, which means lies, hypocrisy, anything that will spoil truth. There is no peace, says my sovereign God, for the wicked, which are people. So you see how the Bible explains itself? It explains itself. Only thing that we would have to do is make sure that we're patient and we let the Bible interpret itself. Once again, we let the Bible interpret itself. Let's move on. Psalm 65 and 7. And again, we're in the NASB version of the Bible. We have now a question. Who stills the roaring of the seas? Who does this? And the roaring of their waves, and the tumult of the peoples. So once again, we see that these symbols are being used to describe people. The sea represents people. Isaiah indicated that the chaotic, rough seas are wicked people. Psalms broadly define seas as people. Let's examine one more script. We'll cover this further when we get to, again, Revelation. And the reason why this presentation is worded this way is because I did do a class on Revelation, the 17th chapter. And I believe that the Father gave me a lot of good information to share with the Mishpachah on who that great whore is that sits upon many waters. Hallelujah. Revelation 17 and 15. And he said unto me, the waters which you saw, John the Revelator, who was on the island of Patmos, for being a revolutionary, like a Fred Hampton, like a Huey Newton, these guys stood up for what they believed was right in trying to bring the people together. All right, so we have to start somewhere. So once again, he said unto me, the waters which you saw were the harlot sits are peoples and multitude and nations and tongues. Wow. The answer is right there. The Bible uses symbols of seas as people, multitude, nations, and tongues. Knowing this, don't Jesus' words in Matthew 4:19 make a lot of sense? And again, I don't want to scare nobody with the word Jesus. Okay. The word Jesus, Yahushua HaMashiach, he's known in tongues by Yeshua. Some people call him Yeshua, but I'm talking about the individual that came during the first century, but look at it from a Hebraic perspective. Watch what the Mashiyach says in the book of Matthew, Yahuah 4:19. And once again, this is in the NASB version. He said unto them, which is his Talmudim, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Fishers of men. We know that fish live in the sea, but the sea represents also people, nations, and tongues. And so what the Mashiyach is actually doing is making his disciples, Talmudims, light bearers to go out into the world, into the sea, not the literal sea, because that's only symbolic, and bring consciousness to an unconscious people. That's all that verse is saying, Matthew 4:19. And I jumped ahead of the gun a little bit, but I'll read it anyway. The Mashiyach is saying that he wants to make disciples who will help spread the gospel of the good news so that people can be saved. He wants to bring fish out of the sea into his kingdom. This is why the Mashiyach would tell parables of the dragnet in Matthew, the 13th chapter, verses 47 and 50. Let's read that right quick. Again, the kingdom of Shamayim, or heaven, is like a dragnet cast into the sea. This is not a literal sea, but it's just an example. Symbology, typology is being used here. And gathering fish of every kind. And when it was filled, the dragnet, they drew it up on the beach, and they sat down and gathered the good fish into containers, but the bad they threw away. So will it be at the end of the age. The angels will come forth and take out the wicked from among the righteous, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place, which is a furnace of fire, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So there are consequences to misbehavior. The time was up at 490 years, beginning with 457 BC, when the decree was put out by Cyrus. But it was Xerxes now who implemented Cyrus's work. So in 457 AD, 457 BC, the time was up at 34 AD with the death of Stephen. Stephen died at 34 AD. 457, 490 years forward gives us 34 AD, and also we see something else very interesting happening. This is now where we see the conversation where Mashiyach is having with Shaul, Paul, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. In the Bible, seas or waters can represent multitude, tongues, and nations. Winds. What are the winds of Bible prophecy? Let's examine that. And we're just in the book of we're in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, verses 1-3. And this is the reason why a lot of times it takes me so long to put together presentations, is because I want to make sure that I do a thorough job. All right? And right now, this is a one-man show. All right? A one-man show where I'm trying to put together these PowerPoints, doing a lot of reading. So if I miss a week or two, rest assured, I'm not just laying back, not doing anything. Your brother is actually doing some reading, some studying, looking at the language, looking at a lot of the different versions, the Greek Septuagint version of it, looking at some of the writings of Jonathan, just trying to make sure I get the best information possible so that there's not a lot of mistakes. So what are the winds of Bible prophecy? Let's look at Jeremiah, the 49th chapter, verses 35, 37. Thus saith the sovereign of hosts, behold, I am going to break the bow of Elam, which is another typology and symbol being used. So when this is break the bow of Elam, we're talking about their military. All right, the military. We're talking about here, Elam will be who? The next government, the next nation in line, because after Babylon came the Medo-Persian Empire. So we have the Persians at this point. So let's read on. The finest of their might, which is their bow, which is their military, I will bring upon Elam the four winds from the four ends of heaven, and will scatter them, which is Elam, to all these winds. And there will be no nation to which the outcasts of Elam would not go. Okay, so if you're talking about this dispersion. So I will shatter Elam before their enemies and before those who seek their lives, and I will bring calamity upon them, even my fierce anger, declares the sovereign. And I will send out the sword after them until I have consumed them. Now, winds are describing a way to scatter people. Just like when you look at Luke 21, let me pull that up right quick, Mishpachah. Luke 21. I didn't add that one to the PowerPoint. Luke 21. Let's see. I'm going to have to come back to that one. But what I'm referring to is someone's there where, oh, here it is. 21. Oh, yes, 21:24. And they, which is Israel, again, Luke 21:24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, which is talking about Israel, and should be led away captive, that's being scattered, into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So my argument is that Israel was led away captive into all of the nations, and the same thing is being said here in regards to Elam. Israel in 70 AD was led away captive into all of the nations. The same thing that we're saying here. Winds are described in a way to scatter people. Winds bring calamity. Wind brings swords against a people or nation. So in a broad sense, winds bring strife upon the earth. Strife could manifest in many forms, as I brought out in the book of Luke 21:24. Winds can be a military strife, all right, political strife, or even an economic strife. Whatever form, winds bring about calamity. And we can see that in the book of Revelation 7, the 7th chapter, verses 1-3. Let's read that quickly. Revelation, the 7th chapter, verses 1-3. After this, I saw four messengers standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth, so that no wind will blow on the earth or on the sea or on any tree. And I saw another messenger ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried out with a loud voice to the four messengers to whom it was granted to harm the earth. So once again, we're breaking down what does the word winds mean. And the word wind could be a military strife, political strife, or even an economic strife. And right now, I'm arguing is that we are in an economic strife, a political strife, and a military strife right now. And it's only escalating. But watch how Revelation, the 7th chapter, verses 1-3 read. It says now, do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our sovereign on their foreheads. All right. So from the above verse, winds brings harm. In this context, the winds of strife and harm are being held back. They're being held back. They are held back so that the sovereign people can be sealed for the time of the end. And we'll cover this more in Revelation. But for now, just notice that winds can bring harm, severe harm. And I should have put death. So let's be very careful which side we're on. So we have now broken down winds, sea, and beast. And what do they all mean together? So think about this. Winds are blowing from 4 directions. Example, north, south, east, and west. On the sea of peoples, multitude, nations, and tongues. The winds are bringing strife, Mishpachah. Strife, calamity, and harm across the world. This 4th beast will be unlike the other beasts that its predecessors. This 4th beast will be more deadlier than the Greeks, more deadlier than the Medo-Persian Empire, more deadlier than the Babylonians. Deadlier because Rome is being described as iron. Iron is tougher than gold. Iron is tougher than silver. Iron is tougher than brass. But when iron begins to rust and crumble, it crumbles like cake. It crumbles. And this is the reason why I had asked. We have to make sure that we stay focused on what is going on around us, because there's a lot of things happening geared towards a special ethnic group in the world today to keep them away from seeing the bigger picture. Because all eyes, for the most part, is going to be on Diddy's trial on Monday. We have a lot that's going on in the entertainment world with boxing. We have the football season about to come up. What's going on in basketball? And entertainment is ran by black people, meaning basketball, football, even baseball, soccer, Mishpachah. These things are ploys to keep our eyes away from what is really going on. It is so important that we stay focused and understand, whenever you get the time, make sure that you get a good understanding of the book of Daniel 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. It speaks volumes. Once you have mastered that, go into the book of Revelation and use those books in Daniel in comparison, and show how Gabriel, who is speaking to John the Revelator on the island of Patmos, is going to even give John the Revelator more information on end time events. Okay, I'm just reading some of the comments here. Iron refers to the spirit, which is stronger than the flesh. Okay, all right. Just hit the like button so we can create a little algorithm here. And let's go ahead with the rest of the slides here. Okay, so who are the 4 beasts in Daniel chapter 7? Let's look at Daniel chapter 7, verses 4 through 7. Watch this now. The first beast was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until his wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. And behold, another beast, all right, a second one resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs was in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, arise, devour much flesh. So right now, Mr. Car, we have a lion with eagle's wings. We have a bear with 3 ribs in his mouth. All of that needs to be defined. After this, Daniel, he kept looking, and behold, another one, this is the third one, like a leopard, which had on his back 4 wings of a bird. All right. And some say this bird was actually an eagle. And that's going to play a very critical part in understanding end times events, where we continue to see these symbols, typologies, and we see eagles' wings being used even with the Roman Empire, and even with the emblem that is used in America today. We see an eagle with wings, and we'll talk about that as we go ahead with this series here. Verse 6, and this, after this I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard, which had on his back 4 wings of a bird, and some writings have an eagle. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And so watch the timeline. We have the Babylonians, the Medo-Persian Empire, and we have the Greeks. After this, I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast. Behold, dreadful and terrifying, extremely strong in comparison to its predecessors. And it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and it was different. That's the operative word. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, the 4 beasts include a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a very strong beast with iron teeth and 10 horns. Remember the number 4, okay? Because we're building off of the pattern of Daniel chapter 2, and I did a class on that already. So we're building off of the pattern of Daniel chapter 2 when Nebuchadnezzar had his dream. Okay, so there are 4 metals. 4 metals, there are 4 beasts, and there are 4 metals. So the first metal is gold, which represents the Babylonians, which was like a lion and had 4 and had wings of an eagle. The silver represents the Medo-Persian Empire, which is the bear that had 3 ribs in his mouth. And those 3 ribs, now they also represent something. And what is it that they represent? They represent Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. Okay, again, the bear that had the 3 ribs in his mouth, which represents the silver, those 3 ribs that was in his mouth meant that the bear conquered Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. Where we at here? There were 4 metals, gold, silver, bronze, and the bronze, we know that to be the leopard, which was Alexander the Greek. It had this horn, and it had 4 wings and these 4 heads, and that represents the 4 kings that came after Alexander the Greek, which was Cassandra, Lysistrata, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. And then comes up now the iron, which is the Romans. And that beast is described as a horrible beast. That 4th beast encompassed, Mystery Card, that 4th beast encompassed the Babylonians, the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Greeks. This is the reason why sometimes you might hear of Rome being the Greco-Roman Empire. But just know that this 4th beast now was extremely strong because it encompassed all of the characteristics and all of the nature of his predecessors. Let's read on. The lion. Dates are very important. They are extremely important. So making sure that we have the proper timeline is going to also help us to get a better understanding of what is going on in Scripture. So the lion, which is Babylon. Babylon ran from 605 to 539 BC, which is about 66 years. 66 years. Now, I'm going to throw a little bone out there, and it's going to have some meat on it. The lion, which is Babylon, and Babylon reigned for 66 years. In the book of Revelation, the word Babylon is mentioned 6 times. You have 666. What I'm trying to share with you, Mishpachah, that this mark of the beast is referring to a system. A system. And when do we see now the beginning stages of this system, where we now begin to see this mark of the beast come into play? It comes into play during the time of the Romans. And America is an extension of Rome, for sure. Let's see how this whole thing plays out as the wheels continue to turn, as prophecy continues to unfold. Notice the lion has the wings of an eagle. The wings were plucked, and it was made to stand on its feet like a man. It even had a human mind. What could this mean? All right. This is my question to you guys that are listening. First, let's start with the lion. A lion is a ferocious beast and is considered the king of the jungle. In a similar way, the eagle is one of the most majestic birds of prey, right? The lion is king of the beast. The eagle is sovereign or lord over the air. And gold is the finest of the metals. And we will see this now in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter. Now, in the same way, ancient Babylon was a mighty empire. History reveals to us that a winged lion was evidently now the official symbol of the Babylonian kingdom. This was a common symbol of Babylonian sculptures and designs. And we can look at some of this now with Jeremiah, the 4th chapter, verses 6 through 7. And it's going to reveal that Babylon from the north is a lion. Let's make sure that we put these scripts together. Jeremiah, the 4th chapter, verses 6 through 7. Lift up a standard towards Zion. Okay? This is a violent statement that is being used because what is happening is the Father just had enough with Israel because they refused to return. Watch this now. Jeremiah 4, 6, and 7. Lift up a standard towards Zion. Zion, seek refuge. Zion, do not stand still. Zion, for I am bringing evil from the north. And justifiable because Israel refused correction. I'm talking about collectively as a people. I'm bringing evil from the north, a great destruction. A lion has gone up from his thicket. That lion is Nebuchadnezzar. That lion is Babylon. A lion has gone up from his thicket, and a destroyer of nation has set out. He has gone out from his place to make your land a waste. Just in case you didn't get it, Jeremiah is sharing with the people. He's lifting up a standard towards Zion, and he's telling Zion that a destroyer of nation has set out. He is going out from his place to make your land desolate because of Israel's disobedience. Your cities will be in ruins without inhabitants. We're talking about symbols here. It is time for us to pay very close attention to what is going on today and learn from our past experience when Israel was disobedient. Also notice now, the wings were plucked and the lion was made to stand up on 2 feet like a man. As we know, a lion is a beast that moves on all 4 feet. However, when the wings are plucked, it stands up as a man on 2 feet. It is even given a human mind. Think about this for a minute, all right? Because I like to pay very close attention to the little nuances, okay, to help me to get a better understanding of script. When the wings were plucked, Mr. Ricard, it said now that this lion, which is a man, which is Nebuchadnezzar, stood on his feet, on his 2 feet as a man. It was given a human mind. So think about this. From our study, and I did a study on this also on Daniel, the 4th chapter, King Nebuchadnezzar's pride caused him to act like a beast, all right? He lived like a beast for 7 years. His hair even grew like eagle's feathers. And we can find that now in the book of Daniel, the 4th chapter, verse 33. I want to make sure that I clear and cover all bases. Let's read Daniel 4:33. Immediately the word concerning Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled, and he was driven away from mankind, and Nebuchadnezzar began eating grass like cattle. And his body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair had grown like eagle's feathers and his nails like birds' claws. Did we forget that part? Are we forgetting the symbols that I talked about earlier? The symbols meaning the winds, the seas, and the beast, and the word king and its association with kingdoms. Come on, you can't make this up. It is very important that we follow along with the program. However, once Nebuchadnezzar now recognizes the sovereign's rule and authority, God's rule and authority, he regained his consciousness. His reasons return to him, and he gets back on his 2 feet to reign as king again. There is no mistake who this lion is. The lion with eagle's wings represents the Babylonian Empire. Now, let's read up here. We only have a few more slides here to go, Mr. Ricard. I want to thank you for your time. Let me come into your living rooms and go over this lesson in regards to the Mashiyach. Where are we at here now? The bear, which is the Medo-Persian Empire that ran from 539 to 331 BC. Again, the Medo-Persian Empire ran from 539 to 331 BC. Now that we know that the lion is Babylon, the bear which follows Babylon in sequence is the kingdom of Medo-Persia. Notice that the bear has one side raised up and 3 ribs in his mouth. All right, that's going to be very important. Make sure that you pay very close attention to detail. Details are going to be very important. So this bear now, one side of the bear was higher than the other. And we know that one side now represents Media. And as the bear begins to stand upright now, we know that the other side represents Persia. So the Medes and the Persians, they ran like simultaneously, which is going to help us to understand who the little horn is later on in the series. All right. I have so much information to share, but I'm going to slow it down and make sure that I keep it the way that I have it here in this slideshow presentation. And the reason why I like slideshow presentations is because it kind of keeps me on the track also, because I have so much information to share in regards to Daniel 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, and Daniel 2, 7, 8, 9, 10. And one of the most feared scriptures, again, that you rarely see Hebrew Israelites go to is the breakdown of Daniel, the 11th chapter. And that's the third time that I said that here this evening. Daniel, the 11th chapter. That is a game changer. Okay, watch this now. Now that we know the lion is Babylon, the bear follows in sequence is the kingdom of Medo-Persia. Notice that the bear has one side raised up and three ribs in his mouth. The one side raised up represents the kingdom of Persia. So history tells us that at first the Medes and the Persians ruled jointly, but that later the Persians rose up to be the greater power, just as I just described. Also, the bear is directed to devour much meat, and this meat meaning to conquer, people. Meaning it is told to conquer and defeat. The three ribs in his mouth represents three territories or regions that it had defeated. History now, because you have to also throw history into our understanding of what is going on in the book of Daniel. So history records show that as Persia grew stronger, it conquered the territories of Babylon, Lydia, which is modern day Turkey, and Egypt. And an easy way that I found to remember this is the acronym BEL, Bel. And so the B represents Babylon, E represents Egypt, and the L represents Lydia. So that's the way I find it easy to remember some of these things here. Excuse me. The next one that we have come up is the leopard, which is the Greeks or Greece. And they ran from 331 to 168 BC. Remember, following the timeline is going to be critical. The next beast that follows is the leopard, which had 4 wings and 4 heads. All right, 4 wings and 4 heads. So in sequence, the beast that follows Medo-Persia is Greece. Wings represent speed. And to top it off, the leopard had 4 wings. Now watch this. The leopard, aka the cheetah, and I know that a leopard and a cheetah is the same. They're different. But the leopard is a fast-moving animal by itself. But let's look at description. A leopard is already a fast-moving animal. On top of that, it didn't have 2 wings. It had 4 wings. So that means that this leopard is moving extremely fast. Extremely fast. And this leopard represents Alexander the Greek. And Alexander the Greek moved at such a pace in conquering territories. He conquered the world, the New World at that time in around 10 to 12 years, which was remarkable. And Alexander is known as Alexander the Greek. Alexander the, what do they call him? Alexander the Great. I was about to say something else. He is known as Alexander the Great because of his strategic military power and the speed that he used from 331, because he died around 300 BC or 329 BC, because he only lived about 33 years, and then his kingdom was divided amongst Cassandra, Lysichimus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. So wings represent speed. The following scriptures associate power with speed and swiftness of eagles. Let's even define that. Let's go to the book of Habakkuk, or the book of Habakkuk 1 and 8. Their horses are swifter than leopards. Who's that describing, Mishpachar? Their horses are swifter than leopards and sharper or keener than wolves in the evening. Their horsemen come galloping. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swooping down to devour. Jeremiah 4:13. Behold, he goes up like clouds, and his chariots like the whirlwind. His horses are swifter than eagles. Woe to us, for we are ruined. Jeremiah, Mishpachar. Jeremiah is speaking of what is going to befall the nation of Israel. And what happened to the nation of Israel is the Babylonians came and removed her from her position. And before the Babylonians, you had the Assyrians who took Northern Kingdom into captivity because of her disobedience in 721 BC. Timeline is going to be very important, Mishpachah, and we can't make this up. Let's look at Deuteronomy 28:49. All the way back to Deuteronomy 28:49. It says, the sovereign will bring a nation against you, Israel, from afar, from the end of the earth. Watch this now. These people are being described as a people. As the eagle swoops down, a nation whose tongue you should not understand. Greece came to power very quickly. Alexander the Greek, the first king, united the Greek states. Within about 10 years, he conquered the then known world. It is said that after he conquered all, he sat down and cried because there was no more worlds to conquer. However, Alexander died at the age of 32 at the peak of his military career. Some of the writings that I've read, they said it was 31, some say 30, but let's say between 30 and 32, all right? Because he did not plan for his successors, his 4 generals divided the kingdom for themselves. They were Cassandra, Licinius, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. So again, I use the word CLSP, which helps me to remember the acronym CLSP, which helps me to remember because it says class, which is Cassandra, Licinius, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. That's an easy way for me to remember the 4 heads of power on the leopard. Then we have the very strong beast with iron teeth. Rome ran from 168 BC to around 476 AD. I have to also explain this too, okay? Because again, this is a lot of history. There was an Eastern Rome and a Western Rome, all right? And we'll get into that a little bit later when we begin to look at the battle at Milvian Bridge. We begin to look at Constantine as he moves the capital from Rome to Istanbul, Turkey, where we now begin to look at the Byzantine Empire. So the next kingdom that follows Greece is Rome. Notice that this beast has iron teeth. Iron reminds us of the legs of iron and the metal man of Daniel chapter 2, which represents the Roman Empire. Iron legs and iron teeth are in an exact match, okay? Because we're looking at now Deuteronomy 28:49. It devours, crushes, and tramples the remainder with its feet. This is a defining characteristic. Beasts typically devour and move on. Not this beast, not this 4th one here. It is different. It acts exceptionally aggressive. All right, exceptionally aggressive. It is unlike the normal activity of a regular beast, which is the Romans, which in America is an extension of Rome. My argument is, being that America is an extension of Rome, she doesn't just devour and move on. She is so aggressive where if I can't have it, no one else can have it. I would rather see this whole thing go up in smoke before I leave it in the hands of anybody else. So she's different. These characteristics describe Rome's military might and destructive campaigns wherever she would go. This eventually led Rome to victory across a vast geographical area. At the height of its territory conquest, it reached the height of its glory now around in 117 AD, which surpasses now 70 AD now by over 30 years. So during the time of the 1st century, when the Mashiyach came on the scene, Rome was just a baby. Just a baby. She did not reach the height of her glory until around 117 AD. And we begin to understand, even with that, what they call the Pax Roma, where they talk about now the 200 years where there was peace and harmony. And I use those words loosely, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The Pax Roma, where Rome had a little tranquility. So it would span across all of modern day Europe to include England, and in the northwest, Iraq, in the southeast, and the northern frontier of Africa. Nothing escaped Rome's crushing feet, as so America. Also notice that this beast has 10 horns. The horns are obviously a part of the beast, but they are also an extension of the beast. So again, they are part of the beast, and they are also an extension of the beast. This matches with the metal man statue whose legs of iron transition into feet and toes of iron and clay. And this is when we begin to look at what is going on in Daniel, the 11th chapter, where we see now this iron being mixed with clay. And so we see alliances now are being made through marriages. And being that these alliances now in Daniel, the 11th chapter, are being made through marriages, but even through these marriages, these countries are not uniting. So Cassandra, Lysistrata, Seleucus, and Ptolemy, even though they tried to unite these nations, they were not able to do it. And we'll talk about that when we go into the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter. The imagery of the beast with 10 horns is consistent with history. Rome did not fall in the traditional sense. That is, it was not defeated in a decisive military battle like Babylon, Medo-Persia, or Greece. Nor was Rome defeated by an extended campaign waged by a foreign power. Rather, Rome experienced a slow decline and transition. And this is where I'm talking about now. It made mention that this fourth beast, which is Rome, had 10 horns. So Rome experienced a slow decline and transition. So let's try to summarize Rome's decline in the next few paragraphs. I want to thank you, Mr. McCall, once again for your time. We have about 5 more slides, and then we will be done. So again, history is going to be very important. So late in the 3rd century, the Emperor Diocletian split the empire into 2 geographic regions, namely the East and the West. The idea behind this was that the Roman territories were too vast. Rome had gotten humongous. They were big. So the idea the idea behind this was that Rome territories were too vast for one emperor to manage, especially if they had to respond to a emerging crisis. And so as today, what do we have? We have embassies. We have embassies all over the world. So because America's power has grown so big, so if there's an issue, guess what? There are embassies and there are military bases all over the world. And what I should have done, and it just came to me, I should have shared with you the U.S. embassies around the world. All right. And there's over 700 embassies around the world. Over 700. Just in case something was to kick off. But we see here now, during the 3rd century, which is part now of the Roman Empire, it makes mention that Rome had grown so big that they needed to split Rome in half, where there's an Eastern Rome and a Western Rome. So Diocletian split the empire and ruled in one half. He appointed a co-emperor to rule the other half. With the split came divided responsibilities and divided resources. In a way, this was the beginning of the end of the Western half of the Roman Empire. And Mr. McCall, what I'm reading here, you can just find this in any history book or just Google it. All right, just Google it and it'll tell you the same thing, because I also want you to check my sources here. Just Google Eastern and Western Rome, Diocletian, the splitting of the 2 empires. And a wealth of information is going to come up. Now, the Western Roman Empire had a more difficult geographical frontier to protect than the Eastern had. The West had a much longer border to manage. This would open up more opportunities for the Goths, okay, the German barbarians, which are the 10 heads that actually migrated into Rome. So these invaders came in, the German barbarians. However, it is not that the Goths wanted to conquer Rome in a traditional military sense. They saw Rome as a prosperous state and wanted to be part of it. They were principal migrants, but they also wanted to put some distance between them and the Huns, who were a constant threat. If they could get permission from Rome to cross what they call now the Danube River, all the better. It would be a nice barrier to further separate from the Huns, because the Goths was having issues with the Huns. And again, this is all history. And Mr. Cobb, this is all Bible. This is all Bible. And they did just that. So the Goths petitioned Emperor Valens in 376 AD to cross into Roman territory. At that time, Valens allowed it with a couple of conditions. Even though a few Goths were already converted to Christianity, okay, they had to convert into Christianity. We talk about that a little bit more in detail because there's a lot of history here. In addition, they also had to remember or to render military services to help protect the northern frontier. We're almost done. Because this latter part of this presentation is just going to be a lot of history. But I believe that it's very important because it lays out the framework on how to look at the book of Revelation and also the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter. Daniel, the 8th chapter and the 9th chapter, there's so much history and information there. And I'm going to show that Daniel 7 and 8 complement one another. And then we have to answer the big question or point to this big elephant in the room. The way that we have the book of Daniel, it goes Daniel 7 and then Daniel 8. But looking at it historically, we're going to show that Daniel 8 came before Daniel 7. Once again, Daniel 8 came before Daniel 7. And that means a whole lot. A whole lot. Because we have to identify who is this little horn. And just to let you know, that little horn is not Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Once again, that little horn is not referring to Antiochus Epiphanes IV. I'll just leave that there. Where we at here with this slideshow, we only have 4 more slides to go and we will be done. Okay, let's pick up on the latter part of this here. By 476 AD, the Western Empire ended, all right? A German barbarian by the name of Odoacer disposed the child emperor Romulus. I talked about Romulus about maybe 2 months ago. I did an extensive study on him. The child emperor Romulus Augustulus, he sent word to the Eastern Roman emperor Zeno that there would be no need for an emperor in the West. At that time, Odoacer became the king of Italy. While the political entity of the Western Roman Empire ended, the civilization of Rome continued through the successor states of the German barbaric tribes. I feel that I have to say that again, because we have to make sure that we pay very close attention when we're reading. While the political entity of the Western Empire ended, the civilization of Rome continued through the successor states of the barbarian or barbaric tribes. 3 more slides to go. The 10 horns. The 10 horns represent, my argument is Europe. The extension of the Roman Empire, which ran from 476 AD to present. The 10 horns are the result of the transition of the Roman Empire to the successor states of the barbarian tribes. Notice that horns are a prophetic symbol for kings or powers. Let's look at Daniel 7:24. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom, 10 kings shall arise or will arise. It's just as simple as that. These 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings. So the 10 horns are 10 kings. Many assume that there were exactly 10 kings. I want to make sure that this is clear. Gasad, you said that there was only 10 horns. What the Bible is doing is trying to keep the audience attention. Were there more than 10 horns? Absolutely. Let's read it. Let's just read it. Many assume that there were exactly 10 kings or 10 barbarian tribes. However, history does not support this, all right? There were more than 10 tribes, and their number and territory shifted over the centuries. Nevertheless, some of those tribes included the Ostrogoths, which are the Eastern Goths, the Visigoths, Western Goths, the Alemanni, the Franks, the Angles, the Saxons, the Burgundians, the Hercules, the Lombards. We have a group called the Thuringians, the Vandals, etc. But the scriptures tells us now to concentrate on 10. So it's best to view the 10 horns as a symbolic number. All right, a symbolic number, because we know the collaboration of these nations, they're growing. But the number 10 is symbolic. It's a symbolic number. So I don't want anybody to get mixed up in thinking that there was only 10 barbaric tribes. But I'm only sticking with the program the way that Daniel outlined it from the information that he got with Gabriel. So 10 is encompassing a number that represents the whole of something. So I have it here in quotes here. We should be careful not to push the prophetic symbols too far. To try to force fit a view that isn't clear, supported by history, would be constraining and manufactured. 2 more slides. So, Mishpachah, let's try to incorporate all this knowledge about the 4 beasts in the graph below. All right. We have a metal man image to my far left. We have the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron. And then we have the continuance of all of this, the iron legs, the feet of iron and clay. Then we have in Daniel 2, we have the gold that represents Babylon. We have a date of 605 to 539 BC. Then we have the silver, which is the Medo-Persian Empire that runs from 539 to 331 BC. Daniel 2, we have the bronze, which represents the Greeks from 331 to 168 BC. The iron represents the Romans, which ran from 168 BC to 476 AD. And we have the iron and clay, which represents Europe, 476 AD to present. Now, we can also see this comparison now because Daniel is given more than one way of identifying this dream. In Daniel, the 7th chapter, the gold is Babylon. Babylon is also the lion. And the lion has eagle's wings. And we have the silver. The silver is the Medo-Persian Empire. And the silver is also the bear, raised up on one side with 3 ribs in his mouth. The bronze is the Greeks, which is also the leopard. The leopard had 4 wings and 4 heads. The iron represents Rome. And it's described, and I'll show you later in the book of Ezra, where that Rome is actually, or the 4th beast is actually referred or denotes a eagle. So the iron is Rome, which ran from 168 BC to 476 AD, which is the beast. And that beast is being described as dreadful and again, extremely strong, large iron teeth, and different from all other beasts. And then we have the iron and clay, which is Europe from 476 AD to present, to 10 horns. So for the graph, we have a repetition from Daniel to the metal man There were 4 metals, and there are 4 beasts. Just as the legs of iron transition into the feet and 10 toes of iron and clay, the dreadful beast also had 10 horns as an extension of itself. So let's look at Daniel 7 and 8. Notice that something new is introduced. Everything we have talked about so far has been part of the metallic man. But now we're going to look at additional information. The Mashiyach spoke of this in Matthew 24:15, the abomination of desolation. It is very important when we begin to understand its significance for today. Daniel 7 and 8. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, this is a great mystery. Another horn, a little one, came up from among them. Them meaning who? Cassandra, Lysichimus, Seleucus, Ptolemy, or among them meaning the 4 winds. That's the great mystery. And 3 of the first horns were pulled up by the roots before it, and behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. So we have to pay very close attention to this little horn. And then final, Mishpachah. Here we see a little horn emerge. We're about to understand what happens after Rome transitions to the successor states of Europe. More specifically, something happens in Europe after 476 AD. A little horn comes up from among the successor states of Europe. That is a little horn. A little king or power comes up in Europe. Notice that the little horn has eyes and a mouth like a man and is uttering great boasts. Also notice that in Daniel 7:24, the little horn arises after. Again, in Daniel 7:24, the little horn arises after the 10 horns. It is different and it removed 3 kings. Daniel 7:24, let's read it. And as for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom, 10 kings shall arise, and another will arise after them, which is after the 10 kings. And this little horn would be different from the previous ones and will subdue 3 kings. So this little king now, all right, is going to be different from the previous ones. And this little king, this little horn now will subdue 3 kings. Now, we're going to come back and discover more about this little horn in greater detail, Mr. Ricard. But I want to thank you for lending me your time today. I know this was a long lesson. I try to keep my lessons down to an hour, but I really want to make sure that everyone understands the building blocks. The building blocks. Mishpachah, the return of the Mashiyach, with a question mark for now. All right. So I want to thank you, Mishpachah, for your time and your time and all of your efforts that you have been showing here and all of your support. And again, always make sure that you hit the like button, the dislike button, just to let me know that you're following along. And if you have any questions with anything, please get in contact with me and I can share with you the PowerPoint. And with that, I'm going to say, Mr. Mishpachah, enjoy the rest of the day. May the Father continue to bless you and your family. And we'll do this again, not next week, but the following week, okay? Because there's a lot of information that I still need to bring out because we could be going into the little horn. But the power buster, all right? The power buster is going to be when we go to the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter. I guarantee you it's going to be a mind blower. And with that, Mishpachah, I'm going to say shalom, shalom. May the Father continue to bless you. And until the following week, may the Father bless you and keep you safe. Shalom. Okay, we got to write it.